is an unsweetened chocolate. I've got to take care of it. And a teaspoon of fine instant coffee, and I'll show you that. And I do it in the microwave because I can't be bothered using a double boiler. But you know how sometimes it boils, it starts spattering. So I read if you put the butter paper over it, it kind of holds it in. I did this ahead of time because I figured it would be easier, and I've just kept it warm. Okay.
Judy, what size is that that container under your stand mixer, the bowl?
The bowl, it's big.
That's big.
It's big. It's a big mixer because I use it for challah, and I can make a double batch in this. But a hand mixer works just fine. Mm-hmm. You don't need a lot of power because there's not that much that needs to be mixed.
Okay.
Wait, I just want to set this. Okay, Mike.
Yes.
It should just get a little bit thick, but again, it doesn't matter too much. Brownies don't really like to be beaten a lot. So it's supposed to get a little lemony colored, which this is, and that's good enough. So now I'll show you okay, this was the butter and the chocolate, and I happen to have the espresso, which is very nice and fine. Can you see it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Rather than granules, because sometimes granules don't melt enough. The coffee part is mine because I find it cuts the sweetness a little bit. And so I typically use it. Now, I'm going to pour this in, but I'm only going to pour in a little bit because in case it's too hot, I don't want it to make the eggs curdle. So I'm just going to put in a little bit and we'll mix it up. And I'm going to do this on a low speed. And that should warm the eggs a little enough. And then I'm going to put the rest of it in. This is not the best spatula for it. I'm going to switch spatulas. Okay, we're almost done with this. And I try really hard to get most things out. I'm going to ignore the foam. Because on the cooking shows, they don't scrape out enough. Okay, so I'm going to just let this mix. And now, if we were doing, this is not in the recipe, if we were doing this for Passover, and I have never found unsweetened chocolate. We're not talking about bittersweet. We're talking about plain old baking chocolate without sugar in it. You can substitute 1 cup of cocoa and 4 tablespoons, I have to check, right? I didn't use it, so teaspoons of oil or butter for 4 squares of chocolate. Okay, we're going to take this out. And this is plenty done. Might have taken them out a little bit sooner, but this will be fine. And I have the other ones, and then we'll let them sit just for a few minutes. And if we're lucky, they will fall out perfectly. If we're not lucky, they won't.
They look perfect, Judy.
They look kind of nice, I will agree. Okay, back to brownies. Now, the other substitution, instead of using flour for Passover, I used to use ground walnuts. And I would do, well, the basic recipe says a heaping half cup of flour. I always found the silver palette that called for half a cup just too wet. So I made it a heaping one. But with the nuts, I started with half a cup of nuts and half a cup of cake meal. And then I decided, I mean, I don't know whether I didn't have cake meal. I figured, let me use all nuts. And for gluten-free people, which I have in my family, I now just use all nuts, which reminds me, in the kugel, it says a tablespoon of matzah meal because that's what Grandma did, but I don't think you need it. If you want to put it in, it won't hurt it, but it works without it. So I have both almond flour and almond meal. And since I don't have enough almond flour here, I don't think, I left it out so you could see how quickly this comes together. Yeah, there's not enough in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this one. And then I don't have to have a mess on the counter. So I'm putting my cup in, and this should do very nicely. It doesn't matter exactly. Now, the original recipe says fold in the flour or the nuts. I decided it doesn't matter. If you're using real flour, sometimes you have to sift it a little or you get lumps, just like with the nuts. You want to see the lumps? And maybe they'll come out and maybe they won't. But it looks like it's about done. I'm going to scrape it down. And let's do this. If I see any lumps, I try to get rid of them.
Judy,
Now, normally, yes, go ahead.
where did you get this recipe from, Judy?
Silver Palette's First Cookbook.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Under normal circumstances, I would use a teaspoon of vanilla, but for Passover, pure vanilla extract is not okay. So I don't use it. And I could put in a teaspoon of coffee, a teaspoon of something else. Oh, this is interesting. These look a little bit different. They were not on the top shelf, but they'll be fine. Let me see if I can get them out. Mike, you don't have to follow me. Here we go. As they say, the proof is in the pudding. So if we're lucky, they will just fall out. If not, I get unhappy. Good.
Mazel tov.
Yep. That, and I will tell you, when the pan starts sticking, I'm very frivolous. I throw them out, or I use them with papers for muffins, but I then get new ones. And I have found it doesn't matter if they are cheap or expensive, they all stop losing their no-stick property. Now these, I don't know. Good, I wanted to show you what happens. They're not coming, oops. David, if you're on, this one's for you. So I'm gonna let those go and I'll dig them out later. But you can see how when it's really not a good nonstick pan, it's misery. And I'm looking for, Mike, can you move back, please?
Judy, just to change the subject a little,
Sure.
you said earlier you would be sending the recipe to Ronnie since you had sent a different one to her initially.
Sure, the brownie recipe.
Right, okay.
And oh, I know what I didn't say, I have often seen safflower oil for Passover. I didn't this year, but if you had to use cottonseed oil, I guess you'd use that because the normal corn and canola are not okay. If you're trying to keep it strict. If anybody has any other ideas on that, I'm happy to listen.
Judy, it's
yes.
Andrea.
Yes,
If you go to the regular oil section, Hollywood safflower oil oftentimes has a P on it.
correct. And that's what I've always done, but when
And
I
you're
bought
not
it,
finding that
here,
this year?
I have not, I did not buy it in a kosher section. I bought it, as a matter of fact, I bought it online because I wanted to have the safflower oil and it wasn't going anywhere else. And it didn't have the P on it.
Okay. If
So-
I see it, I'll let you know. I
Well,
can even pick one up
It's
for you.
okay. It's okay, Andrea. Thank you.
Okay, got it.
But I really, this is the one. I mean, I purposely tried to get it. It says it's certainly kosher and it's parov, but it doesn't have the letter P.
The P, right.
So,
Is it possible that grapeseed oil or peanut oil would be okay? We have a couple of recommendations in the chat.
I would assume so. I mean, I've never, grapeseed would be absolutely fine. I don't know about peanut oil, but I don't see why not. Here, once again, my spatula, so that I can get most of it off. And we are, let's see. Now I need to get the real spatula. And I make these dairy. I used to find kosher for Passover margarine that wasn't horrid. But lately, I haven't, because it's only in this brick, and I don't like that, so we just have them for when it's dairy.
Judy, Sally Steinberg was asking what the substitute for flour is, but you use the almond flour, right?
I used almond flour, almond meal. In the past, I've used ground walnuts, whatever nuts. And so now I'm just putting it in this pan. I'm glad you got to see how miserably those other kugels came out. Because it wasn't nonstick enough.
I'm going to interrupt and say I'm sure they taste just fine.
Well, I'm sure they will too, thank you, but it's not the same presentation, that's for sure.
But you have a great attitude, Judy.
Yeah, well, let's see. I don't know if David is on, announce yourself and you get the rejects. And I'm just going to spread this around a little bit. And sometimes, since this is not something that needs a lot of air in it, I sometimes bang it on the counter a few times so that there are no air bubbles. Because every once in a while, they get baked and it bubbles up and there's a hollow in it. Okay, these, I use my convection oven, so I do them at 325 instead of 350. But 350 will certainly work. And I'll put these in the oven shortly, but I will show you. Here's one that was done.
You don't see the chat session because you're busy, but people are so complimentary.
Oh, I thank you very much. So I made these earlier. And you can see they're in the parchment. I like to refrigerate them before I cut them. And when they're nice and firm, this just peels right off. And that's why I like lining the pan, because I'm not cutting them in the pan. I don't have to worry about how I'm going to get them out. And for my friend Allison, who said, show us how you cut them.
Judy, if you were going to use the ground nuts, Robert Levine wants to know, how much of that would you use? Would it be 1 for 1, like a cup for it?
What I have done is I have increased the nuts. I used to do it 1 for 1, but now I do a full cup. That's why I put the cup next to the nuts and use the, I'm just gonna wet my knife a little bit. So, and typically what I do is I cut off the edges so people in the house, like the videographer, can get taste. So there's one. So I do that, and then, I mean, I've been known to get a ruler and mark it so that they're absolutely perfect, but I've gotten a little careless in my old age. So I just cut it. And I try to get them even. And if I'm serving them for something special, I try to put them in a pyramid. But then I have to calculate how many I do, and so that's the whole thing. I'm going to put the other brownies in shortly, but I wanted to make sure the oven temperature was right, because from the Kugel, it was too high.
They look nice and chewy.
Okay, they are very chewy. So that's what I'm going to do here. Oh, that was not a straight cut. My mother will say I didn't do a good job on that one. So they're kind of on the fudgy side. And I used to bake them 25, 30 minutes. On the Passover ones without any flour, I'm even going as far as 40 minutes. And Mike, are they okay, or they're not overdone? No, okay. He says they're all right. Nobody seems to complain if they're a little fudgy. And it's like a real brownie instead of with all the Passover ingredients. I think the all nut is better than the cake meal, but I haven't gone back to the cake meal to really compare.
So the big question is, do the edges have 0 calories?
Of course.
Of course, of course.
Of course, that's, I mean, and the edges are drier, but then I have some friends who only want the edges because they like the crispy burnt parts, but these aren't burnt. So that, let's see, timing is okay. Any questions?
Well, let's see. Someone has said that you are our own Michael Solomonov. And other people are saying that they don't cut the edges off because they think they taste great.
That's right. They do. But, okay, here's the reason in part. Part of it is that if I'm taking them somewhere, we have some edges to eat. But if I am plating them, and let's see if I can, let me do one more round, and I'll show you how I sometimes plate them.
You want them uniform?
Well, I do, and sometimes I stack them. Let's see if I can do it here. So I say, sometimes I really do take a ruler and some toothpicks and mark it, but not always. Okay, so what I might do is, see if we have enough here. So I might stack them. And this isn't, they're not even, but I will maybe do a 4x4, then a 3x3, and a 2x2, and then one on the top. And it makes a great presentation. And then somebody can take one and it doesn't disturb the whole thing, except for my brother-in-law who likes to be cute, and he'll take one out from the bottom middle, like this one. But if I'm doing that, then I want all the brownies to be level. And if I have the edge, it's not always level.
Okay.
So, but I don't always do it like that.
Okay, the next question, Judy, is do you freeze your baked goods for Passover? Because Helene was saying that she makes a flourless chocolate cake and she gets nervous about baking it in advance and freezing it. So what's your advice?
Very few things that I serve for a holiday meal don't spend some time in the freezer. I am unable to do everything right before a holiday meal. It's just too much. I have to pace myself. So I often make the brownies in advance. I'll make the Kugel, okay, so I used to switch all my dishes, and I'd have one side was Passover, one side was chametz. A few years ago, I decided to release myself from bondage, and I now do all of my cooking with my chametz things. But during the week of Passover, I have my Passover dishes, pots and pans, and the whole deal. So that week it feels like Passover, but I am just so much happier because it's not as much effort, and I'm getting to the point that matters.
Right.
So I will use these for Passover. They will be in the freezer, and nobody has. Now I also have a manual defrost freezer, which is a nuisance when you have to defrost it, but it really keeps things, I think, much better than a frost-free. However, if I'm making the brownies this week and put them in a frost-free freezer, they'll still be fine in 2 weeks. Nobody has ever said to me, gee, have these spent time in the freezer?
Mm-hmm. No complaints.
Right.
Good.
Anything else? What I want to do, give me 1 second to check the temp on the oven, and I'm going to put the other brownies in.
Yeah, and Judy, if you send that recipe to Ronnie, can we get, Helene, if you're listening, can we get Ronnie to resend it out to all the people who signed up for this Leopold, demo?
Absolutely, no problem. Judy,
Okay.
when Judy sends it, I'll forward it over and Ronnie will send it out to everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you, Helene.
I never lowered the temperature, so the brownies will not bake for a while.
So Judy, I have one more.
The only difference in the brownie recipe is I have the Passover substitutions. And I am happy to send that on to Ronnie. And I had made some tweaks to it, and I just ended up sending the wrong one. Sorry.
Judy,
All
it's
right.
Andrea again. So do you see these little clips Can you see that?
No, I'm gonna come, can you move this around, Mike?
Pretty well.
What clips?
Do you see these?
Where are you, Andrea? Wait.
I would say the name of them. I
Oh.
can't remember.
Oh, yes. Oh, do you
Okay.
use those?
Binder
Do you use
clips.
those on the
They're
pan?
like binder clips.
Binder
Yeah,
clips.
yeah.
So sometimes when I'm using parchment in a pan, like you were lining, it can be very recalcitrant, as you demonstrated.
Great idea.
You can clip these along the edge of the pan with the parchment, and it holds the parchment in place.
Great idea.
And then you pour in whatever, it doesn't even get in contact with the food. And then once the stuff is poured in the pan, it just stays put.
Great idea. I have them in the drawer right next to me right
Yeah,
now.
see what happens, but it works really well. Even with, I line loaf pans too, and I do the same thing.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome, Judy. Thank you.
Okay.
It's like a warm blanket being with you.
You want to get in front?
What am I?
Yeah.
No, I want to see everybody at this point. Because I now get to see Janet and David's on. David, did you see the Kugels that didn't make it?
Okay, I just want to know, I've been on this whole time. David pops in for the last 30 seconds and he gets the extra Kugels? I mean,
Well,
he's just saying here.
The way of the world, my sister, the way of the world.
He's local and he was probably putting kids to sleep.
He's a local vor.
That's right.
That's funny. But there's some really messy ones, Dave.
I'm happy to take them.
Okay. Where's the?
Judy, thank you
Yes.
so much for, welcoming us in and going, so patiently through the steps and being such a relaxed baker. You've been marvelous. Everybody is complimenting you.
Thank you. I'm happy to do it. And I would say nothing is that precise. So just do it. And if it's a little wetter, a little drier, a little browner, a little less brown, it doesn't matter.
Not rocket science.
Judy, it's Susan.
It's not rocket science. What?
Judy, it's Susan Gross. I have a quick question. First, well, and a comment. First of all, your cameraman deserves all those ends. He has a second career. Beautiful. Everything looks fantastic, and I can't wait to especially try the potato stuff. Question about doing the potatoes. You're not concerned about the extra liquid because the way you would be when you were making a latke, because it's all going to evaporate in the oven.
Right. And it's at a high temperature. When I use what I call the killer blade, the chopping blade, without shredding first, I thought, oh my goodness, it's so liquidy. But it worked. So, okay.
Great. And thank you for giving me justification for replacing my 45-year-old muffin tins.
Oh. And last week, ShopRite had a sale on them. And so I bought it. The minis are brand new because I really suffered with the last batch I did there. Because sometimes when I have a little leftover batter, instead of putting them in a big muffin tin, I'll make some minis. But definitely, you
use
not doing it if you don't have something really nonstick.
Okay.
Thank you. That was great.
Judy,
So,
thank you very much.
so
Carol,
much.
thank you for moderating and fielding all the questions. We appreciate you doing that. And thank you to Mike.
Okay,
We'll work the ground.
it was good to see everybody.
Work for food.
Especially my family members who share the same grandmother. I was hoping my Australian cousins would be on because their grandmother and my grandmother were sisters. So I even wore my Australian apron. But and it's tomorrow at this point,
Early.
30, because it's the next day and everything. Anyhow, if you have any questions, let me know. I will send the Passover version of the recipe to Ronnie, and have a good Passover, everybody.
Aziz and
Thank you so
Pesach.
much.
Thank you so
Happy
much,
Pesach,
Judy.
everyone.
That was a lot of
Thank you,
fun.
Judy. That was great.
Thank you so
you.
much. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Judy, it was so nice to have Grandma in the room.
Yeah, it sure was. Bonnie, I thought about showing a picture, but I didn't have a good one, so.
Well, anyway, you did a great job and thank you for what you did.
And you know what they taste like.
Yes, I do know it and miss it all the time, every holiday.
Yeah,
Now
well,
I'll have to try to make it.
That's what I was gonna say. I can almost taste it.
what was that, Mark? Marshall is the one who got the corner, so he probably doesn't care that they're round now.
No.
Uh,
I can almost taste
Jan-
it.
Janet's comment is funny, that her kids now think you're supposed to cut the edges off. And, okay, I'm just checking to see if there's anything I missed here. All right.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night and thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, thanks.